This video is sponsored by Professional Photographers of America. Join a community of over 30,000 photographers that includes equipment insurance, education, and business tools made specifically for photographers. Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to bring back photo assignments. I was thinking about a topic for a video this week, and I really wanted to cover the whole idea of one lens and a commitment to it in focal length. I thought, well, what is going to be a better pairing for this than photo assignments? If you're not familiar with photo assignments, you're new to the channel, something that I've done kind of off and on for the last few years, probably more lately off, but we're bringing it back on today. So we are going to talk about the one lens photo challenge. As many of you well know, that lenses are measured in what we call focal length. There's two types of lenses. We have prime lenses, which are a fixed focal length. This is a fixed 35mm lens. We also have zoom lenses, which have variable focal length. So in other words, you can adjust the lens across a range. So for instance, you might have a 24-70. The lens that I'm filming this on right now is a 16-35. That means that I can go as wide as 16 or I can zoom out to 35. So it gives me more variety in the focal lengths that I can cover. For this photo challenge, we're actually going to be sticking to prime lenses. We're going to keep things really simple. So you need to find a prime lens that you're going to use for this. Now, focal length plays an enormous role in how the final image looks. Different focal lengths have different looks. So for instance, if you were shooting a portrait of somebody, yes, it is true that if you were using, let's say, an 85mm focal length, you're going to be standing further back. You can get the same composition if you move down to a 35mm lens, let's say. You're just going to have to get a lot closer. But the look between those two photographs changes enormously. And there's a lot of factors that go into this. First of all, there's the field of view that you're dealing with. There's the way depth of field works. In other words, what f-stop you have that set at. And then there's also just the generic distortion that you're going to find as you move across a range of focal lengths. So for instance, longer lenses or more telephoto portrait length lenses are probably going to be prone more to pincushion types of distortion, where you get a barrel type distortion the wider you go. So there's a big difference between the look that you get. And because each one of these lenses has its own specific look, as a photographer, it's really important for us to understand what we're looking for and what lens is going to achieve it. In other words, you should start seeing in terms of focal length. I had a great conversation yesterday with a gentleman that I am doing an interview with that I will be posting a video on later. He's a sports photographer, and we were talking about his approach. He came from photojournalism as a background that led into sports somehow. We'll get into all this in another video. But it was actually interesting talking to him because he just said in the middle of the conversation that he sees in focal length. He will walk onto a field and he starts seeing something that is going to be a 400mm focal length, or he sees another image that's going to be maybe a 24mm focal length. And I thought that was a really cool way of putting it, because that is our responsibility as photographers, is really understanding how to see in those focal lengths. This is something that seems like a basic concept, but it's something that I don't see a whole lot of people actually putting into practice. I want to get into all of the details of this assignment, but first I want to give a quick shout out to somebody that you guys actually need to know. This is our sponsor today, who are the awesome folks over at Professional Photographers of America. I want to tell you about a nonprofit organization that I am a member of that has helped me not only to be a better photographer, but also a better business owner, and it's called PPA, which stands for Professional Photographers of America. If you haven't heard of them before, well, they're one of the oldest and largest photography organizations in existence. Today, they are over 30,000 members strong. PPA's mission is to create a vibrant community of successful professional photographers by providing education, resources, and industry standards of excellence. So what do you get being a member of PPA? Well, a lot of perks. To start with, I think the big one is that you get $15,000 in gear insurance. That's enough to justify the monthly low rate right there, but there's also more. You also get small business and studio resources. These include legal things like contracts and forms, copyright, marketing, so on and so forth. These are really a big help if you're a small business owner. You also get access to vendor discounts from companies like Apple, B&H, Dell, and many others. It's a great way to save some money. They have small business and studio resources. These are legal things like contracts and forms, copyright, marketing. You also get access to education and training videos that are on their website. When you sign up, you also get your first year free pass to imaging USA, which is the largest photographic event of the year for both 2021 virtual and in person in 2022. And don't forget to block your calendar January 17th through 19th of 2021. That's just a few months away for Imaging USA at home. They are really an awesome resource. I can't recommend them enough. I have a link in the show description, and if you think this might be right for you, I highly encourage you to check it out and sign up and become a member. Being a member of an organization like this is going to provide a lot of support, and if you're a small business owner, it's kind of a no-brainer because it gives you a lot of resources that come in very handy and protect you as a photographer. So anyway, check out the link in the description, and I'll give a special shout out and thanks to the awesome folks over at PPA for sponsoring this video. So with this challenge, you are going to pick one prime lens, so no zoom lenses. You're going to pick one fixed focal length lens, and you're going to live with this lens and shoot with it for an entire month. An entire 30 days. Now, why would we do that? Well, we're really going to get to know the focal length inside out. You can pick whatever you want. I'm probably going to go with a 50 is what I'm thinking right now, and that is going to be the focal length that I live with. Now, here's the deal. Some of you I know shoot professionally, and if let's say you're a wedding photographer, I know it's completely impractical to actually shoot your job with one 50mm lens, let's say, and just say to the bride and groom, sorry, photo assignment, probably not going to buy it. But at least for your personal work and what you're practicing with, that's what I want you to live with. And if you're not shooting enough personal work and you're not practicing photography enough, then, well, guess what? This is going to be a 2-for-1 because you're going to be doing a lot of shooting over the next month. And then just keep things easy. So the month of November is coming up. Do it through the whole month of November. You know, set up a folder in whatever imaging software you're using. If it's Lightroom, if it's Capture One, set up a folder and keep all those images in there, because what you're going to want to do is review them from time to time, particularly at the end of the month. Quick, interesting side note. So one of my heroes, it's a gentleman that I know, and he's one of my favorite photographers, is Ralph Gibson. I've covered him on the show before. It was a long random story, but I ended up going to his studio in New York on a whim last year, and I did a little video while I was there. And Ralph is an incredible person. At one point, and I don't go into too much of this on the show because it's just really personal to me, but I was asking him about my own work, and we were going over some things, that I'm not doing so well, some things that I am doing well, how to expand on that. It was interesting because the conversation wrapped up, and Ralph says you really need to be shooting with one lens and a rangefinder. Of course, he's a Leica guy. So my assignment was just to stop all the other stuff. He said, take all that stuff on the shelves behind you and go throw it out, which is a little impractical, but I love the way he put that. But the whole point is that I'm going to be using one 50mm lens. And I asked him, I said, I'm just curious why you say 50. And he says, think of all the amazing famous photographs that were done on a 50mm lens, which is really interesting to think about. When you look at somebody like Henri Cartier-Bresson, who just he had this wonderful style and this approach to photography that worked, and he was able to, on a very high level of consistency, repeat that over and over. I'm not saying his shots all looked alike, but that approach and that style are very similar. And he pretty much used a 50mm lens. If you look at other famous photographers, whether it's Robert Frank, whoever it is, 50mm is just such a great focal length for that. And when I started talking to Ralph further about it, he said the other thing that he loves about it is it's the closest focal length to just naturally the way his eye sees, or any of our eyes for that matter. And it's true, this is a 35mm lens, but pretend it's a 50 for a second. If you put this over your right eye and leave your left eye open, you can actually get a sense of the scene, and you're framing it up in the composition. And it's a really unusual way to work. And I think definitely if you're working with a rangefinder where it has frame lines and you can see what's in or out, Fujifilm cameras like the X Pro 3 will do this to an extent, X Pro 2, so on and so forth. They're not actual rangefinders, but it's a really interesting way of being able to see and compose. Now, it's very difficult for me because I'm left eye dominant, so being able to put the camera over my right eye, this eye just doesn't pick this up the same, but I'm left eye dominant. So my theory is with a little practice, that could be a technical way of shooting for me that's new. So this is what the reason I'm sharing this with you is this is what I want you guys to think about as you're doing this photo assignment. You need to challenge yourself to do something in a new way and see things in a new light, no pun intended. Another point that I want to make is when you're selecting what lens you're going to commit to for a month, don't pick something based on the fact that maybe you spent a lot of money on it. It can be simple, it can be cheap. The one lens I actually have in mind for using is this, which is my old Nikon 50mm f1.8. This is not an outstanding lens by any stretch of the imagination. It came with my f3 when I first bought it. But why would I choose this lens when I have access to nicer 50mm lenses? Well, first of all, it's small, it's compact, it's lightweight, and it's got good image quality. So we compare this to something like the Canon 50mm f1.2, which is one of my favorite lenses. It's incredible. It's also massive. It is not compact. compact, and what I don't want to do is use a lens like that is going to maybe prohibit me from taking it somewhere or being able to use it. So I think going smaller is definitely better. I'll probably just adapt this over to one of my Sony cameras and I'll use it that way. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting too, and at least I was thinking about this in terms of my own personality and what I start looking for, because I end up reviewing a lot of equipment, so I know what to look for in a lens. I know what kind of bokeh that I like. I know what kind of sharpness I like. I know how to look for things like field curvature, and I don't want any of that to be a compositional crutch. Not that field curvature would be, but I think it's really easy to do with a shallow depth of field. If you're shooting at f1.2 and you're blurring out every background, that's not really thinking about the composition in the same way as if, okay, I'm really just going to be stopping down to f4, f5.6. That's not the point of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to compose through the lens, and I'm trying to see the world in a different way and being able to say something visually with the camera. So I would really recommend going with maybe less expensive gear. You don't have to do anything fancy with this. The point of it is to learn. So much like the last few photo assignments that we've done, I'm not going to do these in a structured kind of way necessarily where we're going to have a deadline and all this stuff. I do want to provide further instruction as we go, so I will do some more videos on this, and you'll see those as we unfold over the next few weeks. And so this is going to be kind of an interesting exercise to go with, and I would love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop me a comment below. I will catch you guys in the next video. Until then, later.